Thanks, Jack. I got to make sure I'm on. I think I am. Can you hear me? There we go. So welcome to all of you. It's an honor to be here. I've known Jack, sorry, I call him Jackie. I've known Jack for a lot of years, and we've been through a lot of really big spiritual things together, which is great. I used to teach Jack, I used to coach Jack, and I got him over the fact that he thinks that I like girls more than boys early in age, so hopefully he's getting past that part. But the great thing about the relationship Jack and I have had is he was with me when I was part of a youth ministry program that we did in La Crosse, and he was really instrumental in that, and I know he's big into the Point of Grace ministry. So it's a blessing to have a young man like Jack to be able to get me involved with this, so thank you for having me. As Jack said, we're going to be looking at identity tonight. Something will happen every 75 seconds during our presentation tonight, and at the end I'll remind you about that, and I'll see if you can kind of come up with what's going on. But every 75 seconds something will happen, and we'll get in more into that. So you've seen these. My generation, first of all, I want to tell you I am not part of the millennial generation. That's you. I am Generation X, and I am not like you. I'm older than you. I don't use technology as well as you. I love your generation, though. I truly mean that, because your generation makes a lot of the things that I used to struggle with a lot easier. Because you took things that I did, or I thought I should be doing in my generation, and you've made them easier. I have a phone that I can do everything on. I can text, I can email, I even understand Twitter. My son, who's 13, he's in your generation, he teases me about that. But I don't pretend to be you, because you're really unique. I'm going to get into some statistics with you about who you are. And you may know some of these things, and you may be able to relate to some of these things, which is great. And if you learn some things about this, I think that's better, because you're going to go out and you're going to leave college, some sooner, some later, but eventually you're going to have to be able to communicate with people your age. I know how to communicate to Generation X, because that's me. I make it a point to be able to. That's people my age, people a little bit older than me. But your generation is unique, because you've been through things that I never had to go through, and things that have really shaped you. And that's kind of what we're going to get in tonight, is how do you see yourself? How do other people see you? And then finally, in the end, what's the most important way that you need to see yourself? So with that, let's talk about who you are for just a few seconds. This is a picture of a mirror. Why do you look in a mirror?
Comb my hair.
Comb your hair. Excellent. That's an easy run. I'm almost there. Thank you. Why do you look in a mirror? This is where you answer. We're going to have a lot of interaction tonight, so just try to, as much as you can. Why do you really look in a mirror? To see how good you look? No. You look in a mirror to see how bad you look. You want to see what's wrong. If you honestly woke up in the morning and you thought, man, I look great, you obviously don't have to worry about your hair. I really don't either. So I don't look in a mirror to check my hair out. But that's why we look in mirrors, as a reflection to say, okay, who are we? What do we really look like? When I walk out through campus or I go to a class, what do I look like? Oddly enough, your generation doesn't hold that in high esteem like mine does. Not that you go around looking like slobs or anything like that. My generation is the denim generation. Your generation is a sweatpant and yoga pant generation. Okay? And you're more comfortable that way, and that's okay. The Pew Institute is Pew Research does phenomenal work. And if you ever want to read more about your generation, you can go online. They have a very extensive report on people who are in your age group. And they come up with a lot of great things. And I was really surprised by the number of differences. I'm 42. Most of you are probably somewhere in the 18 to 22-year-old range. How many differences there can be. So like if you look at this first one, if you look at my age, adults 38 and older, that's Generation X. Most of us are white. That number dramatically goes down from 70%, and this might be a little hard to see in the back, to 61%. Now you may think, that's not a lot. Well, it is. 9% on 300 million people. That's a lot of people. And that's a big percentage drop. Hispanic number goes up 6%. Black goes up 3%. The Asian population stays about the same. The other, I didn't quite figure out what the other was in there. I imagine that that might be people of combined races. I'm not quite sure, but that kind of stays the same. What that says to me is your generation has to reach people that I never did. I'm a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. Okay? And when the neighborhood I grew up, even though I grew up in Columbus, Ohio, which was really diverse, the church that I went to, the school that I went to, not a lot of people different than me. That's not the world you live in. That's not the world you go to school in. It's not the world you're going to walk out into. It's a different world. This is a stat that really amazed me. Do you have a profile on a social networking site? Now, not just Facebook, but anywhere. How many of you have something on social network? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. All right, if you were to look around, I don't see anybody not raising their hand. I have those things out of necessity. I have a Facebook account so I can keep track of my youth group kids. It's like an instant messenger for me. But that got old. They don't do that anymore, so then I had to get a Twitter account, and I have an Instagram account because of my son. Those are the reasons I have them. I don't do much on them. I don't post on them. I don't visit them daily. I don't do the things on them that you guys do. But look at this number. The percentage who say yes in my generation, and for those of you who don't know, the silent generation, this would be your grandparents, maybe even your great-grandparents. The boomers, these are probably your parents. Generation X, that's me. That's Pastor Chevy. That's you, 18 to 29-year-old. 75% of you say yes to that. That was a year ago with this research. I'm sure it's probably more than that. Less than half of mine do, half or less, and it drops and it drops and it drops. There's a generation before this called the greatest generation. Those are the people who would be your great-grandparents. And those are the people who fought in World War II. That's how they got that name. So that's where you set. You use this stuff more than anybody. Here's another one. This is something I wouldn't have guessed, okay? Percentage of millennials who say that this is one of the most important things in their lives. It's called being a good parent and having a successful marriage. And then the third one that comes up is helping others in need. I'm amazed by your generation. You flock to help people in a way that my generation, it makes my generation look sad. Okay, it makes me look selfish. Generation X's, we generally are. We're called slackers. I'm not a slacker. I can be easily distracted, but my energy is always going. I'm one of those guys who slipped through the ADD net. My generation, they didn't always catch us. So all of a sudden I can be doing something, and my wife will have to say, let's finish one, let's get this done, and let's move on to the next. I have coping mechanisms, that's what helps me. But look at your number one thing. Now as I go through this, I also want to say to you that this may not be all of you, okay? These are generalities. So don't take this as a personal thing, but this is just your generation. And you need to understand that being a good parent is over half of you. Do you know why? You got any guesses? Why being a good parent is the highest priority of all of those things asked? Go ahead, way in the back. What?
In our generation,
Yeah.
does not have
Yeah.
good parents.
Yeah. Your parents who come out of that late boomer section, they're bad parents. Okay? That's just a generalization, okay? And I'm just saying that, okay? High divorce rate. They became the generation known as the highest divorce rate in America. They peaked at over 51% at one point. That means half of you in this room that get married, you would have ended in divorce. Your generation is changing that, by the way, which is nice, which is great. Although you guys are getting married much, much later. And that means you're having less kids, by the way, too. Okay? Just in general. But that's so right. So you don't want that. You also grew up with something I never grew up with. You grew up with a recession. Okay? You grew up with what's called the Great Recession is what they're naming it, which means you've seen your parents, and if you haven't seen your parents, maybe you've seen your friends' parents, and you've certainly read about it all the time. Losing houses, losing job, accumulating debt that is almost just doesn't make sense when you look at it. And the stuff. I was talking with Jack earlier today about my son. He's 13. Typical 13-year-old kid. I go into his bedroom and I look at him and I'm like, dude, do you want to do something cool in here? You know, he's a big sports kid. I said, you want like some posters or something? He walked into his room and he's got this up and that up and it's playing. The only thing that my son cares about that works in his room is the outlet, because he can plug his charger in and he can hook his iPhone up. That's all he cares about. He didn't care about the rest of the room. It's okay if dad puts something up or mom paints it, but he doesn't care. There's two different colors paints in his room right now. All he cares about is, can I get to my phone? Can I connect to the people that matter? Your generation doesn't want the things that my generation wanted. And that's another reason I like your generation a lot. Because you guys, you don't care about stuff the way that mine did. And I think that's great. And you're also not focused on adding to the problem the way that my generation did in a number of different ways. One that's way down here, which is kind of interesting, is having a lot of free time. I did this to Jack, and Jack doesn't know it, but I called my dad when I was talking to Jack, and it took Jack, and let me see if this is you guys, it took Jack about 2 seconds to get on his iPhone. While I'm talking to my dad, no downtime. Do you hate downtime? Do you find yourself when you're going between classes on something, listening to something, texting something, reading something? I have to tell my kids at school, you can do your tablets, but there is no walking and doing at the same time. Those are steps. Those will not do well with everything you've got in your hands. So sit and do your tablet and walk, but not together. Your generation doesn't like downtime. You're not your parents at all. This is a great stat, and it's really interesting. Your parents are here, by the way. You'd be 1 year old to be. None of you have boomer parents, because that would mean you'd be about a year or two old, or Generation X parents. But you're here. Work ethic. The boomers are pretty even. But look where that ranks for them. Number one, 17%. We're going to watch a video by Mike Rowe. He's the guy that does the Ford commercials and the dirty job. And he's got some pretty cool insight on what it's like to hire your generation. But look at work ethic here. Do you see it in this column? No, there's technology, music and pop culture. Liberal, tolerant is a big word in your generation. Smarter, and clothes. My generation says technology, but you're twice as much. We have a work ethic. That's because this was a battle with our parents. My dad, and especially my mother, who grew up cleaning houses and working in factories, if I woke up one morning, one summer at a summer job, and I said, I don't feel like going to work, she would grab my ankles and she'd pull me out of bed, and she'd say, you don't have time to shower, you go to work. Now, that wasn't a huge battle because I liked money, okay? But I didn't like always mowing grass all summer. It was nasty and stinky, but it was money. She would never tolerate me not working, ever. I didn't have time off. Do you see work ethic here? Statistically, it doesn't show up on yours. The video we're going to watch, we're going to talk about that just for a second. That doesn't mean you don't like to work. It just means you have a different view on work than what your parents did. Maybe too much. All kinds of studies are coming out about what it's like to have screens in front of you, screen times, all kinds of things. But look at the percentage of you who place your cell phone, your device, tablet, whatever it is, by your bed at night. Now, what does that say? Do you know what I put beside my bed at night? My glasses and a glass of water, and my son's cell phone. I don't put mine, because I don't need it. I have an alarm clock. But that tells me that you are so tied with your technology that for a huge chunk of you, you got to have it with you all the time. And you almost feel weird without it. I feel weird without my wallet, but I could lose my cell phone for a couple days, and I did recently. Mine broke. I had to wait for another. And I told my wife, I said, this is glorious. No one can get a hold of me, and I don't have to answer anyone instantly. I said, this is neat. Didn't last too long. My generation, not nearly as much. Look at your parents. Less than half of them would ever do this. This silent generation, this is the generation that made it through the Depression, was busy with World War II. They were just trying to get by. They didn't have time for all the other stuff that other generations got involved with. Trends of marriage and parenthood. This is an interesting one because this is a different percentage. It says things that are bad for society. About 60% of you say that more single women deciding to have children is a bad thing. And it comes from the answer that we got before. You're realizing that for a home to be successful, you got to have two people involved. Now, it's not always a man and a woman in your generation, but being single and doing it is hard. I'm a single child. I'm a child of a single parent. My sister's 10 years older than me, so I don't count her as a sibling all the time. Okay? I don't mean that in a bad way, but when you're 10 years old and you have a brother that's born, you're a parent. And when you have a single mom, and she worked all kinds of shifts, it was ridiculous. She was my mom. Okay? I'm my sister's little brother, but she's 10 years older than me. And that is a rough way to come up. Some of the other interesting ones that come in here is you're okay with mothers of young children working outside the home. Only 23% of you say that's bad. Do you know how I know it's okay with your generation? Do you know what's the biggest thing going right now in Lutheran grade schools all across America? Daycare, right? Daycare. And it's not just the 3-year-olds, the preschoolers. It's the 0. It's the just born to kindergarten. That's our biggest branch of ministry in some areas of the country. It's amazing, but it's because your generation, you're okay with it. Again, that may not be all of you, but just in general. More people living together without getting married. Check this out. Now, this is 22% of you say that it's a bad thing. 44% of your parents say it's a bad thing. Your grandparents get almost to 60%. That also says something about a generation and about how much they have been affected in a negative way by marriages that probably didn't work the way that they wanted them to. We're going to watch a video by Mike Rowe, and he's going to lay out the idea of what it's like to hire your generation and some of his thoughts on that. All right, so he has a good point, and the one I want to hit on the most with this is when he talks about work ethic. Now, if I want to get something done quick and I have to do something on my phone and something that's not going right, I will look at my oldest son and I will say, please email your mom or text your mom, tell her this, and tell her I need a picture of this really quick. And I'll hand him my phone and he'll do it. The other day what happened was I was trying to get a picture off of my phone and my oldest son wasn't home, but my 11-year-old son was, and he grabbed my phone and did the same thing that my 13-year-old can do. And it was at that point that I realized how far behind the curve I am when it comes to you. You guys process stuff differently. You look at technology and you own it in a way that my generation, I don't know that they ever will be able to. It moves so fast. So when he talks about the idea of results versus the work ethic, we're going to kind of hit on that a little bit more in the second part of tonight, because we have to be careful that as long as we're getting the product out, it doesn't matter how we do it. And the only problem with that is if we go about that way in life, not just with our work, but who we are, how people see us, we can get lost, and all of a sudden you can realize that you don't really have much of an identity. And having an identity beyond your generation, beyond the stats, beyond what people think of you, the right identity is extremely important. So with that, I want to talk about, kind of what shapes your identity. As I started to think about who I was, I'm going to show you who I am. I started to write a list out, and I'll explain some of these as I go. I won't go into any of them too deep. But I started to write a list of who I was out, and I don't know if you've ever done this. I was talking with Pastor Don about it. He and I would have really long, long lists. I came up with about 35 different ways that people would identify me. Okay, 35 different ways, and I stopped. So I told you before, I'm a little brother. I have a sister who's 10 years older than me, wonderful sister most of the time. No, she's great. At one point, I was a principal. That was my first call out of college. Okay, that would be like handing a kid who just learned to drive a 4-speed car a semi. Okay, probably not. If you knew me post-college, if you knew me from Ohio, this is what you would call me. I went home to my nephew's wedding, and I never heard the word John. I only heard this, and usually followed by little Johnny Byus. Also known as this. Growing up, I grew up in a very, don't laugh at that one yet, a very, very poor part of Columbus. We were the kind of family that 2 meals a day was pretty good. I can remember times when my sister would shut the television off because a food commercial was on and she didn't want to get hungry. Okay? The Lord has taken me 1,000 light years away from that life. The school secretary and the church secretary would know this, and if you've had me in class, you would know this. This is why my sister says that her boys could be teachers, because I'm a bad speller. I am notorious. I got into a spelling bee once. Even my mom thought it was a joke. I'm a husband. I have a wonderful wife. She is a rock, and I could not be more blessed to have her. I'm a father. Was never on my radar. When I was your age, even after I had my first kid, I couldn't believe the Lord blessed me and said, I'm going to give you 2 more. He gave me all boys, by the way, and that's his way of saying, stay with what you know, John. I'm a South Ender. I'm going to show you a picture of the South End, and we're going to get to that. Oh, what did I do there, Jack? Thank you. South End. South End to Columbus. You guys have sides in Milwaukee. You have a north side and a south side and the east side and the west side. I'm from the South End. In Columbus, it's got a lot of different cultures, but one of the cultures it has that you guys don't deal with are called the hillbillies. It's a unique group of people, and my kin come from West Virginia and part of Kentucky, and they came up and they settled in the South End. Okay, now I can make fun of this because this is me. I had an uncle. I was telling the guy who made my wonderful coffee tonight that he had a still in his backyard in the city. It wasn't out in the woods. Stills make moonshine. Okay? Those are the kin I came up with. And when you came from the South End, there really wasn't a lot of chance you were coming out of the South End. Not all bad people in the South End, but the people I came from, not a lot of them made it out. Gamer, to a certain extent. Jack likes to talk like that, although I'm losing that with my boys ready. I'm a Buckeye. Sorry. Hopefully it doesn't offend people. Grandfather went there. My dad went there. My brother-in-law. If they'd had a Lutheran teaching college, I'd have gone to Ohio State, but they didn't. I'm a coach. I got back into that this year. That went okay with my oldest son. If you've ever had your parents coach you, you should go back and just thank them. Just thank them, because it's hard. I'm that guy. Okay? I'm glad you laughed at that, Chevy. One of the things I do when I coach is, having refereed and coached for a lot of years, I like to point things out to officials, not in a bad way, but just in a way where I'd like you to really watch this. So I got into a game this year, and he walked up, and one of the officials said, I told that guy, that's that guy. He's going to tell you to watch screens. So I'm that guy. According to the Wells in their book, I'm a staff minister. That means I do kind of things like pastors do, but I'm not a pastor. I'm Mr. B. That's how Jack knows me. That's how other students know me. I teach. Most days I teach. I like to do that. I like to counsel people. That's part of why I do youth ministry so much. And the last one I came up with was Papa Lupa. This is what my boys called me when they were younger. I'm Papa Lupa. There's a Grand Lupa, which is my dad, and then there's Lupa, which is my oldest son. So, how do people identify you? And our last part of this, there's a handout that you got, and we're going to try to spend a little bit of time with that. Not right now, but there's going to be some questions about, if you were to make a list and write it out, how do people identify you? That guy probably was a pretty negative one. So, I'm going to need some volunteers, because we're going to get into something. So just be ready to volunteer, because I'm going to need 5 people, okay? It's a game. I think you'll like it. The South End, that's a picture of St. Paul's Lutheran Church in Columbus. Had I not had St. Paul's in my life, had this little Lutheran school, and for those of you who don't know, Ohio has 5 Wells churches, and we have 2 Lutheran schools. Had that not been in my life early on, had that not been one of the puzzle pieces of my life, I don't know where I would have been. But my mother made a priority that every Sunday, regardless of what was going on, I was always in church. Happy Meal guy. Man, I'll tell you what, Phil Glendy, that's probably the second time I've ever called him Phil Glendy in front of other people. Mr. Glendy, sorry. He was my principal, and he was my teacher for 5 years in a row. Can you imagine leaving a grade and being like, oh, yes, like a new teacher. That's always exciting. And he moves up with you. And then, okay, 2 years in a row, and then he gets a call, and then he moves up with you because he became the principal. And so I had him for 5 years in a row. Man, you get to know people way too much. But here's the one thing I know about Mr. Glendy. When we do youth group events, we'd go play volleyball, do stuff in the gym, whatever, and afterwards we'd always go to McDonald's. Now, one of the things I held up was poor kid, and we were. Happy Meals back in those days were maybe $2. You'd go, and every kid wanted one. They had the toys and all the fun stuff. After every youth group, Mr. Glendy always made sure that I had a Happy Meal. If I had enough money, or if I needed some money, or if I had no money, he always made sure I had one. That's a huge puzzle piece for me as to why I got into youth ministry the way that I did, and why I like to be in the lives of young people. 6.5 hours away. Wow. So imagine yourself at 13. Okay? Imagine me at 13. Okay? I couldn't find socks that matched. I didn't really care if they matched, to be honest with you. I wasn't really at that point in life where fashion mattered a whole lot. That's Michigan Lutheran Seminary. That high school is 6.5 hours away from me. Growing up in Columbus, the one thing that Columbus was not known for was big educational systems. There was a movie called Lean on Me, a movie about a very rough high school. Morgan Freeman was, anybody see that movie? That may be a little old for you guys, okay? Do you remember what that school was like? You nodded your head, right? Rough, right? Gangs, drugs, violence, all of it. That was South High School. They called it the South End for a reason. That was the high school I would have had to gone to. That was my district. So my mother, through a lot of prayer, said, I can send him to the worst high school in Columbus, or I can ship my 13-year-old 6.5 hours away to Saginaw, Michigan, to live with people I don't know, he doesn't know, and trust them. A lot of prayer. As a kid with no money go to a prep school, that was another piece that was answered. We had a wonderful pastor who said, if you want your son to go there, we'll find the money. Somebody else helped pay for MLS. I'll never know who did. Big puzzle piece. Who does this? So there's a quarter up there. You guys know maths? You know when you flip a quarter, you have a what kind of chance? You had a 50-50 chance, right? That's how I got to college. That's how I got to DMLC. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought, being in the church was kind of cool. I didn't know if I wanted to be a pastor or a teacher. So I looked at my dad and I said, I got a quarter in my hand, I'm going to flip this one time. One time. Whatever it lands is where I'm going. And it landed heads. So I went to DMLC. Hopefully you didn't make that decision to come here based on that. That's how I did it. I don't know if the Lord made it land heads or not. I doubt it. Time of prayer. When I was done with my college experience, I got my first call, and I told you I was a principal. I'm telling you what, when you leave college, think about that in a couple of years. Would you want to be a principal of a school? The two gals that I taught with had no less than 50 years of experience between the two of them teaching. What did I bring to the table? A big fat 0. Okay, and certainly not spelling. That's Albuquerque, New Mexico, Sandia Mountains. Man, is that a beautiful part of God's country. At night, when the sun sets, those turn all this beautiful color of red. They have Manana Mountains, which are a little bit farther down the chain. They turn into this beautiful color of like a green apple is what Manana means, I think. Anyway, it's beautiful. I was introduced to some great stuff out there, some great culture. I got into cycling again, which was wonderful. And then I was out there for a year and I got married. I took a Midwest girl, like you folks, and I dragged her all the way 2.5 days driving away from all of her family and her twin sister. Are any of you twins? Yes. Could you live that far away from your twin?
Right now, he was 7 hours,
He goes to MLC and you go here, right? But in your world, okay, but in your world you can Skype, right? You can text, you can Skype, you can do a lot of things. They didn't have that when we got married. So I dragged her all the way out there where there are no seasons. It's either brown and hot or brown and slightly wet. That's it. So we were out there for a year and it was not good. She was sad, she was disappointed, she was frustrated. We got a lot of blessings, don't get me wrong. The Lord took care of us. But it was certainly not where I needed to be in ministry, because being a principal at that time was a far cry from what my gifts were, and her being out there wasn't as well. So time of prayer. I show you this because this is a lottery ticket. I'm going to explain to you why I put that up there. May is when call time comes out for teachers in our synod. In November of that year, we started to pray. We said, Lord, we're going to be bold, and I'm going to pray for, number one, we want to get a call closer to home. Okay? Lord, I don't want to be principal anymore. I want to go and I want to teach 5th grade. If you ever think about getting into teaching 5th graders is the best. While I like other kids, 5th graders and 6th graders, they're just moldable. They're excited. You can get them excited about silly things like commas and exclamation marks, and they just get into it, and you're like, yes. I said, Lord, I want to teach 5th grade, 5th or 6th. Lord, I want to do something with sports because our school didn't have any sports. And we got to get closer to home. I want to teach. I want to be in a big school. I want to learn what it's like to be in a big school. So we got 4 or 5 things on that list. We get to the very last day where calls go out on our Sunday, May 28th. I'm sitting on the back step. I got the barbecue going. The dog's over there. I got a bunch of dead grass. And I'm watching everything happen. And I get a phone call from a pastor at First Lutheran. And he says, hey, this is Pastor Pamprin. And guess what? We'd like you to move to Wisconsin. Okay, so that's closer, a lot closer. That's 6 hours from our parents. We'd like you to teach 5th grade. We'd like you to be the athletic director and coach. And I said, well, how big's your school? And he said, well, right now we have about 140 kids. My dad jokes that I should have been praying for a Cadillac or a boat in there. I should have put something else in there because I'd have got it. I got everything I prayed for answered in one answer. Now it took November, December, January, February, March, April, and at the beginning of May, I'll be very honest with you, I stopped praying. I said, all right, Lord, you want me to go a different direction? Oddly enough, the direction that I thought he wanted me to go was being a loan officer in a bank. If there's one thing I can't do, if there's one thing I'm worse at than spelling, it's lending other people money. Okay? It would have, a lot of people would have got money, but it would have been bad for everybody. He answered every single thing I prayed for. Huge puzzle piece in my life. Now I'm at First Lutheran Church, time to grow. I can't tell you how the Lord's blessed me there, put me in so many different things, which is amazing, and given me this opportunity. So, the reason I showed you my puzzle pieces, because I want you to see in your life that I look at life, it's very much like a puzzle. And it would be cool if you could see all the pieces. It'd be cool if you know where everyone fits, but can you recognize in your life the influences, the people that shape your identity? So, to do that, I want to have a little contest, okay? I need 5 brave people. Not all at once. Yes, come on up. Yes, perfect. I need 3 more. Yes. Oh, yes, perfect. Okay, I need 1 more. 1 more brave person. Yes. Come on up. And you're going to come over to the table here. And who was way in the back there? Is that you first? So you get to come over here. I'm going to give you the special one. No. All right, you come over here. Perfect. And then you go right here. Perfect. And you come right here. And then you go right here. And you go right here. Okay? Now, you know what? Let's do this so everybody can see this. I'm sorry. I kind of messed this up. Yes, you come over here. Don't you look at those yet. Okay. You go all the way over there. Thanks, John. All right. Perfect. Okay? So, everybody's got their room. Now, when I say go, your goal is to get this puzzle put together as fast as you can. Okay? Oh, hold on. Just a second. I'm going to help one of you. Okay? I'm going to help one of you. Here. You can have a box. Puzzle's always easier with a box. Okay? Yep, I'm going to take those from you. I'm going to challenge you, okay? When I say go, the first one done wins. So that's pretty simple, okay? Ready? Go. You're upside down. Keep going, quickly. You're almost there. You only got 4 pieces. Oh, hurry. There you go. Almost. There you go. Make some room for him. Good. Nice. How are we doing down there?
I think Liz might beat me. That would be real embarrassing.
I'm only going to give you like 30 more seconds here. Uh-oh.
Hello.
Look at her help. This is awesome. Hey, you're not allowed to help, by the way.
Where am I help? Oh, my step.
Would it help if you had a box? Oh, you see what it looked. Okay. You got about 30 seconds.
This goes here. This is here. this go? I don't understand.
How we doing
This is
time?
making me lose my
How we doing time? Okay. Done? Okay, we got 4 out of the 5. You're probably going to need these too. Yeah, you'll need those. That will help somewhat. All right, you can stop. All right, let's give them a round. That was good. That was a very good puzzle piece. All right, so while I've got you guys up here, I want to ask you a few questions, okay? This puzzle is completely done. Was that easy to do?
I like that puzzle.
Yeah, I would love a puzzle like this. Wouldn't it be great if this was your life to a certain degree? You knew how everything was going to fit together. You knew how experiences, whether they were good or bad, were going to fit into the life that you're going to have. Kind of. Would it be kind of boring, you think?
Yeah.
It might be. You might really like the puzzle. Okay? You had a pretty easy puzzle because it was how many pieces?
2.
It's just 2 big pieces. Wouldn't it be great if you could put your whole life together and say, okay, this is my early years, and this is my late years, and this is how it's going to fit together. Great, done. Thank you, Lord. That's my life. You had how many?
I have no.
Oh, you had 4, right? Wouldn't that be great too? So you got your younger years, and you got those high school years, which those pieces are sometimes awkward, and then you got college, and then you got, oh, there's later in life. That was quick though, right? You had a little bigger puzzle, and you had a little bit of help. You had the box too. Does it help having a box?
Thank you.
Yeah, right? Because trying to do a puzzle without the box is really hard, even if they're easy puzzles, because there's a lot of white pieces here. You didn't finish. I even took some pieces from you, which that's not fair, because if you don't have all the pieces, you can't do it. Thank you guys for coming up. Yeah, very cool. Now, the reason why I had them come up here and do this is because I truly feel like this, and I talk with kids about this quite a bit, is that life is very puzzling at times. And as you go through life, you get other pieces. Now, my puzzle at 42, and I'm a realist, is probably half over. I'm half of a 84-piece puzzle on average. I'm actually might only be like a 65-year-old piece puzzle. I had a pretty rough early 20s. I did a lot of, a lot of sports, a lot of physical, a lot of hitting my head. So my years might be numbered. I don't know how long. My puzzle may end tonight. My last piece may be here with you tonight. I don't know. I don't know where the Lord's got me going. If we could put our lives together like this puzzle where it's already done, it'd be great. It'd be a lot less frustration. Do you ever walk through life and say, man, why does this happen to me? Or why does this have to be this way? I tell my kids this a lot, whether they're high school kids, is the things you cannot pick in life are you cannot pick when you were born, what generation you're in. You cannot pick your parents. You cannot pick where you were born or the conditions you're born into. So what exactly can you keep control of when it comes to your identity? That's what we're going to be getting into in the last part of this tonight, is what can you keep and what can you do about it? So how do people identify you? What I want you to do real quickly is to take a look at a couple of the questions that I put inside the folder. And with those questions, I want you just to spend a minute or two, and if you're close to someone, and if you're not, maybe get close to someone, and discuss with them just for a minute or so, how would you handle these questions? Are you able to honestly answer the questions? Now with something like this, the more that you do with it, the more that you get it, okay? So the less that you do with it, the less that you understand it. So just take a minute or two, and I want to see what you guys come up with. If you need to slide over by somebody, you were already on stage, everybody knows you, you can do that. All right, so some questions that we looked in that is, and the other thing too that modes of learning will tell you is that when you hear it, you only remember, it's like low, like 10%, 15%. When you hear it and you see it, it moves up into the 50s. When you hear it and you say it, but then when you discuss it or you tell someone else, then your mode learns up way up. And if you teach it, holy smokes, you'll know it forever. Oddly enough, I could teach you how to change a lawnmower blade on a 64-inch Skag lawnmower like that. Not that you'd ever want to, trust me. But I could because I saw it and I read about it and then I had to do it. So when I looked at these questions, The first question is how do you identify yourself? When you saw some of the statistics that I talked about, the generalizations, did those fit you? Did you find yourself agreeing with some of those? Yes? No? Okay. Did you find any of them where you say, I didn't like that statistic at all? I don't like that about my generation. Are there things about your generation you don't like? I know what I don't like about mine. My generation intentionally fought the man, but in dumb ways. In ways that just got us not anything productive in society, just anti-society. We were grunge. You guys might remember that, I don't know. Nirvana was one of our favorite bands, apparently. And we did things just to do things. Your generation doesn't do that. Do you know what's really cool? Is when I talked about this earlier, but you guys get behind things like mine did. For example, you guys will do things with the internet, which I think is just phenomenal. You'll help people. Okay? You'll get a website out and you'll say this person needs help, and you'll get these websites that you can donate $1 to. Do you know how much money you can raise doing that? There's a guy recently in the news, I don't know how many of you saw this, but he had to walk 21 miles to work. Do you know how much money they raised for him? Not just a new truck. It was $300,000. That's your generation doing that. Isn't that amazing? I mean, I think that's amazing. My generation would have said, well, get a car, ride the bus, do something else. We would have never come up with the idea to help him. Are there things about your generation that you don't like? Do you think you depend on it too much, right? Do you ever freak out when you can't charge your phone? Do you ever say to somebody, can I just plug this in? Can I please do this? Do you ever catch kids sitting in here plugged into the walls and like sitting on the floor, hoping they get enough bars up or enough battery up to go to the next, whatever? My son will do that. He'll search the house for a charger before he looks for anything else. Okay? Technology is a big thing. It can be a huge blessing though. Your generation can communicate faster and wider than mine could ever dream of when we were talking to people. Anything else? Do you ever feel like you're ill-equipped? And I don't know where exactly you're at with the Lord, but do you ever feel ill-equipped as young Christians to go out into the world and talk to people who aren't? Does that ever happen to you? Like if someone were to ask you about your faith, where you're at, could you answer them? Do you ever feel like you're not equipped to do that? I always felt that. I felt like my generation, number one, probably didn't care as much as we should have, but not necessarily equipped as well. Jack was generous enough, and he put a question out on Facebook, and I got quite a few answers to that same kind of question. And one of the things I want to talk to you about is when you talk about identity as a Christian or as a young Christian, one of the things that you can never do is make an apology for it. In other words, you're not going to know everything there is about God. Do you know why? Somebody knows everything about this building. Somebody knows everything about the car you drove. Someone knows everything about your phone and the Android system or the Apple phone that you use. Jack and I like to go back and forth between Apple and Android stuff. But do you know why you won't know everything about your faith or everything about the Bible or everything about God? Because you're not God. So when you're out there talking to people and you're sharing with them who you are, and in this first question, I don't know what you wrote down, don't pretend like you have to know everything. And don't pretend that you can't say to them, I don't know that answer, but I know who God is. And I know if I know this about my God and I know this about God, even if I don't know this, I know He loves me. That second question is, how do other people identify you? Would you have the same answers? When you looked at that question, do people identify you the way that you identify yourself? Not all the time. When I put up that guy, that's not a compliment to me. I had to actually have a conversation with that official later on about not being that guy, because I don't want him to know me that way. The last question is this the identity you want? Now, your generation is going to be known for things just like mine, just like your parents. But when you have this identity, if it's not something you want, it's something you can definitely change. it's something you can do something about. Last question, and this is probably the most important for me. Can you see any way that God has shaped your identity? And I would challenge you to do this. And this is something that I have done with several people that have been in my life, is to thank them. To go to those people who have had an influence in your life. I've gone to my Happy Meal guy, and I've thanked him. My mother's no longer with us, but I'll talk to my dad about it regularly, and I thank him for sending me to MLS. You have all these people that God's put in your life. Don't overlook them. How many of you play cards? Play cards of any kind? Even just online, you know? Did you ever hear people say the word luck? Oh, I got a lucky hand, or I got this. Do you realize that cards and luck don't exist together? There are 52 cards in a deck. Mathematically, and I'm not a huge math guy, but I like this part of it. There's a percentage that I'm going to get one card. There's a percentage that I'm going to get 3 of the same type of card. It's all numbers. And I never learned that better, and you'll appreciate this, Pastor, than when I was playing euchre with a friend of mine that I grew up with. Tim had this amazing ability to count cards. Amazing. We'd play euchre, and by the time we got to the set, you guys know euchre? You must. You're in Wisconsin. You know sheephead, right? Okay, I don't play sheephead because the idea of me having to be a partner with someone I don't know or don't like, I don't get into that. I like euchre a lot better. So anyway, so by the time we got to the second round of cards, Tim knew where every card was at, statistically. So whenever he would look at me and he would say, I want you to pick that card up, do you know what I would do? I'd trust him. I'd trust him because I knew that he knew what was good for me in that game. It was great. I hated playing against him, but I loved playing with him. You're going to have these moments in life where you're going to be defined by something, whether it's your generation, whether it's the statistics in your generation, your identity. The one thing that you can do is you can trust the Lord. He pulled a kid out of the south end of Columbus. He pushed him all across America. I mean, literally to the other side of the country. I had never been out of Ohio until I went to Michigan. I had never been out of Michigan until I went to Minnesota. And I had never been on that side of the country. And then he pulled me all the way back to this side of the country. And then he put me here tonight. The one thing that you can do, regardless of statistics or identity or generation, is you can trust the Lord. You can trust the Lord that when he puts people in your life, they're there for a reason. There is no luck, there is no chance, there's no circumstance or happen chance. It's always because it's part of the Lord's plan. And you may not see that puzzle piece right away, but as you get older, as you see more puzzle pieces in your life, the next thing you do is you need to share those with people. Let people know, this is how the Lord has impacted my life. This is how the Lord has done that. And if there's one thing that I know about kids your age, is you like being told the truth. You don't like being lied to. You don't like being exaggerated to. You just like being told, this is how it is. So that's my encouragement. We're going to watch one more thing, one more quick video that gets to the point of all of this, and then I have one more thing I want to share with you. So the question is, how do you see yourself? The last way that I want to show you how I am identified, it's all of you as well. And it's a passage that may be overused, but to me it is absolutely my favorite passage in the Bible, and I use it every time I get an opportunity because people need to understand it. John 3:16, for God so loved the world, the whole world. Now that's sometimes hard to get your head around, but he loves the whole world. He loves that person in the dorm with you that you cannot stand. He loves that roommate that you may have had at one point or another, like I did in high school, especially in college, where I could not wait till we were done being roommates. Okay? He loved the guy that I worked with down at the bar in New Ulm, Minnesota, who used a cuss word for every part of the English language. He loved that guy. He loves that guy. He loves those people that want to kill us. He loves those people who want to steal from us and take from us. He does not love what they do, but he loved them. So he said, you know what, I'm going to do this because I love everyone in the world. That he gave his one and only son. I have 3. I'd never give them up. I could never do that. I'd do anything for my boys, but I would not give one of them up for anything. That whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. So of all the things that I am, the thing that I can say that is most dear to me, above husband, above dad, above son, above brother, above any of those, is the last one, which is I'm a saved child of God. So when people ask you who you are, and it doesn't matter the generation that you're in, it doesn't matter how much you know about the Bible or how much you don't know, the one thing that we all are, through faith, through the Holy Spirit, is you're a saved child of God. And maybe you're close to this, maybe you're getting this, maybe you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if I even agree with that. But the one thing you need to understand is Jesus died for everyone. So when people talk to you about your faith, or they ask you, why do you go to this college? Or they ask you, why do you go to those things on Tuesday night? Or why do you go to that church on Sunday? Or why are you part of that small group Bible study? It gives you an opportunity to say, this is why. And of all the things you will ever be known for, and one of you may be the president here someday. One of you may be, who knows? But this is all that matters, is that you're a saved child of God. So blessings on everything you do, everything you put your hand to, everything you have left to do this year in college, and if this is your last or if this is your first, blessings on the rest of your week. And it's been a pleasure being here with you. Thank you.